Americans first. We live here, not in the Middle East, and we should act accordingly, which is to say, this should be, in a sense, our first priority. We should speak out against injustice, Muslims and Jews and allies together, both here at home and abroad. Certainly, let's speak out together for the Uyghurs and the Rohingyas. Let's speak against anti-Semitism and Islamophobia wherever these pathologies raise their ugly heads. We can empower ourselves to make positive differences in Israel and Palestine by getting involved together in supporting people-to-people projects that save lives and improve living conditions while building bridges of understanding. And I can talk more about my involvement in Project Rosanna and some of that in the Q&A if it comes up. Look, Jews need to grasp, people in the Jewish community need to grasp that Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have as much right to advocate for Palestine in the halls of Congress as do Ben Cardin and Chuck Schumer on behalf of Israel. For their part, I believe Muslims need to engage with mainstream American Jews, most of whom consider themselves Zionists, instead of saying, well, we'll only talk to Jewish Voices for Peace and other fringe anti-Zionist groups. And finally, let's be extra careful not to label each other as Islamophobic or anti-Semitic. But I think the most important point, which I really wanted to go into a little here with some examples, is that we should not allow the Israel-Palestine conflict to be weaponized in ways that drive our communities apart. I would like to discuss an incident, a local incident that took place this spring, which I think has to pale over Muslim-Jewish relations in Northern Virginia and across the DMV. This was the incident related to Abrar Omesh. She was a young Muslim American woman and a member of the Fairfax County School Board, was deeply upset by the outbreak of violence in Israel and Palestine, including Israeli security forces engaging in clashes with Muslims inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque during the last days of Ramadan. So she, normally her Facebook and Twitter page was filled with matters related to the school board, but on this occasion, on I think May 13th, she wrote on Facebook, "Hurts my heart to celebrate Ramadan while Israelis kill Palestinians and desecrate the Holy Land right now." Now, we at Jamaat wish that she had not denounced Israeli military actions without also condemning the ongoing Hamas rocket barrages against Israeli civilians. But we understand why she was upset, as were untold thousands of other Muslims across the DMV. So we were concerned about the response to her tweet by the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington, an organization which many of us have worked and which we respect. The JCRC not only withdrew an award it had been planning to give Omesh for her work to get Muslim and Jewish holidays recognized by the Fairfax County School Board, a great example of cooperation. But in addition, it termed her comments on Israel, quote, hateful, unquote, and asserted that by posting them on social media, she had, quote, disenfranchised the thousands of Jewish families in her district. JCRC added, these actions constitute a dereliction of her duty and they compromise the entire board. She should be held accountable, unquote. So in response, Jamaat Executive Board member Gary Sampliner and myself, Sampliner and I wrote an op-ed published in the Washington Jewish Week in which we asked, quote, in what way did Omesh's tweet, quote, disenfranchise, target, or marginalize Jewish students and their families, unquote, in Fairfax County? Does JCRC mean to convey the message that if elected Muslim officials dare to criticize actions of the Israeli government, they should expect a pressure campaign virtually accusing them of incitement against the Jewish community? Now, on the other side, this year we have seen many Muslim organizations and mosques pull back from cooperation on Muslim-Jewish relations, which is a very painful thing. We understand that there remains, even some months after the events, a strong feeling among many American Muslims that justice for Palestine needs to take precedence. And indeed, all of us taking part in today's discussion, Muslims, Jews, and allies alike, care deeply about what happens in Israel-Palestine. And we need to continue to work together to make a positive difference for our brothers and sisters over there. But as we said before, we are determined not to allow Israel-Palestine strife to destroy our alliance here at home at a time when there are ever more insistent efforts to overthrow democratic elections and impose a white majoritarian ideology on all of us.
As Margaret mentioned, I'm a board member of the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, and just last week I became the co-chair of the Israel-Palestine Committee. I wanted to start just by mentioning the mission of the Sisterhood. It is to build trust, respect, and relationships between Muslim and Jewish women and teenage girls. Together, we commit to stand up for one another, educate one another about our faith and cultural practices, engage in social action, and work to end acts of hate for all human beings. When worshippers were attacked at one of the holiest mosques in Islam, the holiest mosque in Jerusalem, on the holiest night of the year, our Muslim sisters were distraught. I was distraught. It was possibly the worst Eid that Muslims had ever as a collective faced in recent history. How could anyone celebrate when our brothers and sisters were being attacked while worshiping? At first, I was surprised that I didn't hear from my Jewish sisters. It didn't make any sense. They'd reached out to me in other circumstances. If worshippers at the Vatican were attacked, wouldn't we reach out to our Catholic friends? When synagogues were attacked, didn't we reach out to our Jewish sisters and friends? One by one, I started to hear more stories of Muslim sisters who were not only devastated by what was happening in Jerusalem, but were also saddened by the total silence of their sisters. The Israel-Palestine Task Force had been established just a short while before the incidents that occurred in May. We worked together to create a statement that we perceived as fair, and our executive board approved it. When the statement was issued, we heard that the Muslim WhatsApp groups had lit up with largely positive feedback on the statement. At the same time, we began to receive emails. We received 40 emails with positive feedback and about 60 emails with negative feedback. These emails were largely from Jewish sisters. We were told things like we had got it wrong, that social justice terminology was not applicable in this scenario. Some were appalled that Hamas and IDF were called out together. We were told that the situation was more complicated than we could possibly understand, and that we should, quote unquote, stay in our lane. Some of our Jewish board members were taken aback by the negative feedback. Numerous conversations were had about it. Some of our Jewish sisters left the organization because of this statement. Some of our Muslim sisters left the organization because they were ignored or shut down when they attempted to have an open conversation. It was a difficult time. Many of our chapters were not used to engaging on Israel-Palestine. We had spent years actively avoiding the topic. We also learned that we need to do a better job reaching out to our sisters and providing them with the tools to have this essential conversation. It's very difficult to be a Muslim-Jewish organization without facing one of the major issues that divides us. We're actively developing programs and tools to deepen this conversation, including facilitation training, cultural competency training, and a dual narrative-focused virtual trip to Israel-Palestine. The Sisterhood has chosen to meet this challenge head-on, and we believe we will make it through stronger and better for it.
I think it's important to look inward. Both communities need to do that. To have a true alliance, you need to look inward. And I think, we're all here sitting on the shoulders of giants, ISNA in particular, and the Union of Reform Judaism have been doing Muslim Jewish work for decades now. So people know each other at the leadership level, particularly the rabbis, the imams, they all do. We've been doing Muslim Jewish work now enough that we can ask each other to look inward as well as outward. And there's a lot to look at, and in both communities there. I'm talking about Jewish Islamophobia, Muslim anti-Semitism, and I think that's really one of the tasks. It's hard. No one wants to talk about it. You don't raise money in the Jewish community by talking about Jewish Islamophobia. There's not donors that want to support that. The same on the Muslim side. I don't think you're going to find a lot of people saying, yeah, I'm signing up for Muslim anti-Semitism. No, you don't get that. So it takes courage, and yet it's important. I mean, that is the next step, I think, to having a true alliance. And along those lines, I wanted to mention that is one of the projects that JAMAAT does. because, you know, we've been at this a long. People know each other and trust each other. You know, we stick at it through thick and thin, whether it's the Hamas-Israel conflict that existed throughout May. You know, people will stick with it. The co-founders of Sisterhood of Salam Shalom are members of IJMA. It's an umbrella group. So Atiya Aftab and Cheryl Olitsky are both active in our group. Brother Rizwan is, and we welcome others too to join that bring an organization behind them or bring a following behind them, because, you know, we try to be a national organization. We have rabbis and imams on the West Coast, and as well as in the heartland and on the East Coast. So, but one of our projects is we've adopted a procedure whereby any member of IJMA, any member of our 35-member board, can bring a case of bigotry in one community that's focused on the other. And the group will react and do something or not. You know, we'll make a consensus. As you know, IJMA means in Arabic consensus. So we operate.
No, in 2007, Islamic Society of North America and Union for Reform Judaism started a national relationship, you know, where Rabbi Eric Yoffe spoke at the ISNA convention, Dr. Ingrid Mattson spoke at the URJ convention, and from there stemmed a national curriculum on Muslim-Jewish dialogue, Children of Abraham. And there was a chapter specifically on Jerusalem. And so, you know, it was something intentional to make sure that as we engage in Muslim-Jewish dialogue and Muslim-Jewish partnerships and work, that we do not, you know, forget that there is the open, honest discussions that need to happen on Jerusalem and the Holy Land. So from day one, that was center and important. And, you know, subsequently, there was great work. Brother Walter was involved in that from the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding, twinning of mosques and synagogues. And that started with dialogue and then went to community service. You know, so that those are important points and reference points to understand kind of the continued evolution. And then there's been so much more as well, you know, from public policy, countering hate. You know, we stand against anti-Semitism, we stand against anti-Muslim sentiment. We pray for peace, justice, security, human dignity for Palestinians and Israelis. And for all people, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Baha'i, Druze, all faiths, no faiths within the Holy Land. We must continue to have the open and honest discussions on you know, Palestinian and Israeli peace, and we must respect free speech as well, as mentioned by my colleagues here. You know, during the 2014 heightened conflict that occurred, the Adams Ashburn and Beth Havarim Reform Congregation Synagogue, we did a peace vigil together. Imam Majid and Rabbi Hosman did statements together. So this wasn't the first time that we've had saddening, heartbreaking, escalated conflicts that we've had to deal with. Obviously, this was another very heartbreaking conflict, and we prayed for the protection of life. It was actually started in Ramadan. We actually had a pre-planned interfaith Ramadan iftar at the Adams Center. We had Jewish leaders, interfaith leaders join, officials join, and we stopped to pray for peace and protection of life in the Holy Land during that. We appreciate JAMAAT's statement, IJMA's statement, the Sisterhood of Salam and Shalom, as well as you know, many Christian Palestinians and rabbis for human rights and so many Jewish organizations, Muslim organizations. Everybody worked hard to express their thoughts and prayers for peace. And you know, so we have to continue to have those dialogues. One of our good friends and rabbis, he said, we share the same neighborhood, the same schools, hospitals, public square. We must continue to work together for the common good to counter hate and counter bigotry.
And as many of you probably know, there are still 2 remaining synagogues in Kabul. One is completely shut down, and one still had one person, one Afghan Jew who was continuing to run this other synagogue. And in the time of the Taliban, he was forced, this was the first time the Taliban took over in the 90s, he was forced to wear, like other religious minorities, like the Sikhs and Hindus, he was forced to wear something to identify himself as a Jew, as not being Muslim. And so Afghanistan actually has historically a legacy, a Jewish community. Many of them migrated after the establishment of the State of Israel. But prior to that, Afghanistan had a Jewish community. And so, you know, unfortunately, the symbolism of the Taliban is a symbolism that does not encourage diversity and religious freedom and engaging of minority communities. And so many Afghans, rightfully so, fled that situation. Those who worked with us to establish women's rights, democracy, education system in the past 20 years, no matter how flawed it was, it definitely had challenges, it had problems, but those who worked with us for the past 20 years and others wanted to leave. They couldn't see themselves staying under another Taliban regime that, of course, again, banned women education. Girls over the grade of 4 cannot go to school anymore. And they say this is temporary, but that's what they said last time as well. They, of course, have limited life in Afghanistan. As someone, as one of the scholars from Kabul University told me, while I was in Doha, we were trying to evacuate people from Doha, Qatar. He told me, we may still have lives, but they took away our souls. And he said a lot of people in Afghanistan feel that way under a Taliban regime. So when that happened and we started to evacuate people, we made a commitment to start to evacuate our allies, those who worked with us, those who supported us for the past 20 years. And so far we've evacuated over 76,000 people. We have brought to the United States about 64,000 people. We have on our 8 military bases, what we call the safe havens, about 54,000 people currently. And we are waiting another 20,000 people to come from overseas to the United States, the various military bases, which we call safe havens. So it is quite a large undertaking. It is an undertaking. We haven't done something like this since the Vietnam War, since the fall of Saigon. And at this scale and at this short period of time. And so we want to see this story of our Afghan friends and allies who've come here also be successful and be vibrant and a community that does really well. And so we're going to need all of your support as a Muslim Jewish
So the main thing I wanted to talk to you about briefly is what we at Jamaat have done and can do on this area. One, what we have done primarily has been advocacy so far. But then the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and we're really going to need your input on this, is that we are looking into 2 other options for things that we can do as at Jamaat as an organization. Number one is getting involved ourselves in an organization and as a partner in specific drives for donated money, goods, or services, such as winter clothing for the bases. Number 2 is, this is a little bit more challenging, but more rewarding too, we think, from our experience I've done with my own synagogue and affiliated church and mosque, is partner with 1 or 2 organizations in Maryland and or in Virginia in sponsoring 1 or more refugee families. And that entails a lot of associated work, setting up apartments, finding affordable apartments, a huge need, helping pay for apartments after the government assistance runs out, helping them, the refugees acclimatize, tutoring them English, transportation. We think that we'd love to do it ourselves. We probably don't have the resources to do it, but we need to know how many of you could help us out with that. And once we get that information, then we can go out to, and we've talked to a number of groups and figure out which ones are the best fit.